The xenobiologist had studied 17 species across the verdant rim, cataloged flora on 9 worlds, and earned 3 advanced degrees in exobotany before she understood what true fear felt like. That understanding came when she watched a human eat something that should have killed him in under 3 minutes. He smiled while doing it, called it breakfast, asked if she wanted some. Meyerth's people had a saying, "The wisest predator knows which prey to avoid." Standing in that human camp on Verdanis, watching Leon casually consume botanical weaponry like it was a delicacy, she realized humans had never learned that particular wisdom. They'd learned something far more dangerous instead. The smoke reached her first, 300 meters from base camp, and already Meyerth's nasal membranes burned. She stopped walking, one hand pressed to the bark of a flowering tree, the other clutching her equipment case. The scent riding the air wasn't just combustion. Something else threaded through it, acrid and sharp enough to make her secondary eyelids flicker, closed reflexively. Her scanner read atmospheric composition as safe, oxygen levels optimal, no toxic particulates above threshold. Her body screamed otherwise. The Morathi weren't fragile. Her species had colonized 17 worlds, thrived in environments that challenged even the hardiest explorers. But this smell triggered something primal, something that predated her civilization's rise to spacefaring capability. Warning, danger, poison. She pressed forward anyway. The research contract paid too well to abandon over discomfort, and Meyerth hadn't built her reputation by retreating from challenges. 3 standard months cataloging the flora of Verdanis, a garden world so verdant it made her homeworld of Murath Prime look barren by comparison. The humans had specifically requested her expertise. She wouldn't disappoint them over something as trivial as an unpleasant odor. The first human appeared between 2 flowering trees, and every biological briefing Meyerth had reviewed suddenly felt inadequate. She'd seen humans before, studied the holovids, memorized the physiological data. Bipedal, mammalian, bilateral symmetry. Average height 1.7 meters, mass 60 to 90 kilograms, lifespan approximately 80 standard years. None of it prepared her for the reality of one standing 2 meters away. He was tall, easily exceeding the average by 10 centimeters. Lean muscle moved under darker skin that caught the filtered light through Verdanis's canopy in shades of warm amber. His hair was cropped close to his skull, practical and severe. His eyes were brown, deeper than the soil beneath her feet, and currently studying her with open curiosity that felt almost invasive in its directness. Predator's eyes. Forward-facing, binocular vision designed for tracking prey. The thought should have disturbed her. Instead, Meyerth found herself cataloging details with the same focus she applied to rare specimens. The way his shoulders filled his expedition suit, the careful precision in how he moved, the slight upturn at the corner of his mouth that suggested amusement. "You must be Meyerth." His voice resonated deeper than she'd expected. Morathi males had higher vocal registers, a function of their lighter tracheal structure. This human's timbre vibrated in her chest cavity, felt more than heard. Yes, she tried to sound professional, composed. Her voice came out slightly breathless anyway. "You're Leon, that's me." He smiled, showing teeth. Morathi's smiles didn't involve teeth, didn't bear potential weapons as a gesture of welcome. His did, and somehow it didn't look threatening. Somehow it looked warm. "Welcome to base camp. Hope the hike wasn't too rough. The Verdani's heat can be brutal if you're not used to it." The smell intensified as he gestured toward the tents. Her membranes constricted until breathing became difficult. "What is that odor?" The question came out sharper than she'd intended. Leon's expression shifted immediately to concern. "Which one? We've got a lot going on right now. Cooking mostly. We're testing some local ingredients." The words connected to the caustic scent in ways that made her stomach clench. Meyerth's people seasoned food with mineral compounds, subtle variations in salt, and trace elements that enhanced nutrition. The idea of food producing that kind of aggressive smell suggested either spoilage or danger, neither of which should be associated with meal preparation. "Come on," Leon said, oblivious to her growing unease. "Let me introduce you to the team. They're excited to meet you. Don't worry, we don't bite." The attempt at humor landed wrong. Humans did bite. Their dentition included pronounced canines designed exactly for that purpose. She followed him anyway, equipment case clutched tight enough that her knuckles ached. Two more humans worked near a portable cooking unit, both looking up as she approached. Meyerth's throat tightened. She was surrounded by deathworlders, predators who'd evolved on a planet so hostile it warranted a Class 12 danger classification. They could kill her without trying, rip her apart with casual strength that wouldn't even register as exertion to them. One was broader than Leon, with hair tied back from a face that showed more weathering, more scars. His hands were massive, easily capable of crushing her windpipe with minimal pressure. The other was smaller, wiry, with old burn marks on his forearms that suggested he'd survived injuries that would have killed her. His eyes were sharp, assessing, missing nothing. "Russell, Hugo, this is Meyerth." Leon's voice carried genuine warmth. "Our expert on local flora, be nice." Russell nodded, a brief acknowledgement that felt carefully measured. The smaller one, Hugo, grinned. "Perfect timing," he said, holding out something purple and glistening. "We're testing some of the local fruit. Want to try?" Sweet underneath a smell that made every survival instinct Meyerth possessed scream warnings. Her scanner identified it immediately. Solanine derivative, concentration 0.73%. Neural disruption in Marathi physiology within 5 to 7 minutes of consumption. Respiratory paralysis following. Death within 15 minutes without medical intervention. "I cannot consume that," she said, fighting to keep her voice level. "It would be toxic to my biology." Hugo's grin faded to curiosity, not understanding. Not grasping that he was casually offering her poison. "Seriously, this thing's delicious. We found a whole grove yesterday. Gonna try fermenting some tonight." Fermenting. Controlled bacterial decomposition. Meyerth felt her secondary heart rate spike. Leon stepped closer. She caught his scent, cleaner than the cooking smells but still fundamentally different from Marathi pheromone markers. "Warmer. What about it is toxic?" he asked. "Just so we know what to avoid offering you." The consideration in his voice surprised her. Most species showed less care for Marathi sensitivities. Meyerth pulled up her scanner data, hands shaking slightly. "The alkaloid compounds," she said. "Your species metabolizes them safely, but they would cause respiratory failure in mine within minutes." Russell whistled low, the sound piercing in the humid air. "Wild. This stuff tastes like plums. Earthy, little bit tart. Really good." The casual dismissal of lethal chemistry sent ice through her circulatory system. These humans were eating something that would kill her while discussing flavor profiles like they were reviewing literature. Leon's expression had shifted to something more focused, more intent. "Show me what else here would be dangerous for you." Not a request. A command spoken softly enough that it didn't feel like one. She swept the scanner across the cooking area. Half the ingredients lit up red on her display. The roots they were boiling in water that steamed and bubbled. Toxic. Glycocalloid content sufficient to cause cellular breakdown. The leaves they'd harvested for seasoning, dark green and aromatic. Neurotoxic. Would cause seizures within 20 minutes. The peppers sitting in a bowl, innocuous and colorful in shades of orange and deep red. Those would burn through her digestive lining like industrial acid, dissolving tissue on contact. Meyerth felt her secondary heart hammering against her ribs. "This is a garden world," she said, hearing the strain in her voice. "The biodiversity makes it ideal for botanical study. Everything here should be safe, beautiful, a paradise of genetic variation." "Sure is," Hugo agreed cheerfully, dumping something into the boiling pot. "Everything grows like crazy here." The smell that erupted made Meyerth's eyes water, made her membranes burn so badly she gasped. "Everything that could kill me grows here," she thought but didn't say. Every beautiful flower, every lush vine, every fruit that looked like it belonged in paradise. All of it armed with chemical defenses that would liquefy her organs. And these humans were harvesting it, eating it, enjoying it. Leon was watching her face with an intensity that felt invasive. "You okay?" "I am adjusting my expectations," she managed, the understatement of her career. He didn't push, just nodded once. "We'll make sure to keep our food prep separate from your work areas. Don't want any cross-contamination. Could be dangerous for you." The consideration surprised her again. Most species paid lip service to safety protocols, but rarely followed through. Russell dumped something else into the pot, a powder that scattered across the surface before dissolving. The smell intensified until Myrth had to step back, had to put distance between herself and whatever toxins they were brewing. "What is that?" Her voice came out thin. "Spice blend," Russell said without looking up. "Bit heavy on the capsaicin, but that's how Hugo likes it. Makes his eyes water, but he's weird like that. Capsaicin." Her database pulled up the compound automatically. A defensive chemical plants used to deter consumption by causing pain responses in predators. Mammals, specifically. The burning sensation resulted from the compound binding to pain receptors, triggering the same response as actual thermal damage. "You eat plants' chemical defenses," she said slowly, trying to process the concept. "For recreation." Hugo laughed, the sound bright and genuine. "When you put it that way, it sounds weird. But yeah, pretty much. Adds flavor. Makes food interesting. Who wants to eat bland stuff when you can make your mouth feel like it's on fire?" He grinned at her like this was normal. Flavor. The concept felt alien in a way that had nothing to do with species differences. The Marathi seasoned food with mineral compounds, subtle variations in salt content that enhanced nutrition and provided necessary trace elements. These humans were dosing themselves with plant-based weapons and calling it cuisine, seeking out compounds specifically evolved to cause them pain and calling it pleasurable. Leon touched her elbow. "Let me show you where you'll be staying. Give you time to settle in before we go over the survey zones. Get oriented." His hand was warm even through her environmental suit, warm enough that she felt the heat transfer through insulated fabric. She followed him away from the cooking area, grateful for distance from that caustic smoke, from the casual way they handled poisons. The tent he led her to was standard expedition design, climate-controlled and modular. Her equipment was already inside, neatly arranged on collapsible shelving. "We set up your workspace this morning," Leon said, lingering in the doorway. "If you need anything else, just ask. We want you comfortable here. This is adequate." "Thank you," the words came automatically, professional courtesy overriding the turmoil in her thoughts. He didn't leave. Instead, he leaned against the doorframe, broad shoulders filling the space in ways that made the tent feel smaller. "I know this probably wasn't what you expected," he said quietly. "Most species find human food habits disturbing. We've worked with enough xenobiologists to know the pattern. You're being polite about it, but I can see it bothers you." "That is an accurate assessment," Myrth admitted. There seemed little point in lying. His smile was smaller this time, almost rueful. "We'll try not to traumatize you too badly. But fair warning, Hugo's already planning to ferment some of those purple fruits. It's going to smell worse before it gets better. He says fermentation brings out complex flavors. I say it smells like death. Ferment." Her database supplied the definition she'd hoped was wrong. Controlled bacterial decomposition of organic matter. "Why would you do that?" Her voice pitched higher despite her attempts at control. "Makes it taste better," Leon said, and his tone suggested he recognized the absurdity even as he defended it. "Also makes it alcoholic, which humans enjoy. Something about lowered inhibitions and social bonding." Hugo claims the bacterial cultures add depth. "You intentionally spoil food," Myrth said slowly, "then consume the bacterial byproducts. For pleasure. When you say it like that, it does sound questionable." He was smiling again, that slight upturn that made her chest feel tight. "It sounds lethal," she said flatly. Leon leaned against the doorframe, solid and unmovable. "Most things humans eat are lethal to somebody. We evolved on a world where everything tried to kill everything else. Developed some pretty aggressive digestive chemistry to handle it. Stomach acid strong enough to break down bone, enzymes that neutralize most plant toxins, a liver that processes compounds that would destroy other species' organs. We're walking chemical warfare factories." "Earth," she said. "Class 12 deathworld. That's the classification, yeah." He sounded almost apologetic. "We just called it home. Didn't know it was considered particularly dangerous until we met other species. Thought everybody dealt with venomous insects and predators and plants that could kill you if you touched them wrong." Something in his tone made her look at him more carefully. He wasn't boasting. wasn't displaying the aggressive pride she'd seen in other deathworld species. If anything, he seemed almost embarrassed by humanity's biological advantages. Her scanning equipment beeped. She'd set it to continuous environmental monitoring. The readout showed elevated levels of at least 6 compounds toxic to Marathi biology, all drifting from the cooking area on gentle air currents. "I will need to adjust my filtration systems," she said, pulling up the settings interface. Leon straightened. "Seriously, we can move the cooking setup if it's a problem. Put it downwind, farther from camp. We don't want to poison you by proximity." "No," Myrth heard herself say. "This is your camp. I am the guest. I will adapt." His eyes met hers, and something shifted in his expression. Curiosity mixing with what might have been respect or possibly concern. "If you're sure," he said, "but tell me if it gets unbearable, okay? Don't tough it out if you're suffering. We can accommodate you." "I will," she promised. He left her alone with her equipment and her racing thoughts. The next 3 hours passed in focused work, a familiar rhythm that helped settle her nerves. Myrth unpacked her specimen collection gear, calibrated her analyzers to Verdani's atmospheric composition, reviewed the survey zones Leon had marked on the regional map. The planet was everything she'd hoped for professionally. The biodiversity exceeded preliminary estimates by 40%. She could spend years here and barely scratch the surface of cataloging species. If she could survive the humans' eating habits, if she could maintain professional distance from creatures who metabolized death like nutrition. Late afternoon found her at the edge of camp, examining a flowering vine that twisted up the trunk of something resembling a cedar. The blooms were beautiful, deep violet with gold stamens that caught the light. Her scanner identified them as producing nectar rich in compounds her people could safely metabolize. Simple sugars, trace minerals, nothing toxic. Finally, something that wouldn't kill her. Found something interesting. She turned too fast, startled. Leon had approached silently, moving through undergrowth without sound. Predator's stealth. She'd read about it, how humans could track prey for hours without detection. Seeing it demonstrated made her pulse spike. "Potential food source," she said once her voice steadied. "The nectar is compatible with my biology. Actually safe to consume. That's good news." He crouched beside her, smooth and graceful despite his size. "Mind if I scan it too? Want to make sure it's not on our consumption list. Don't want to compete for your limited food options." The consideration struck her again, deeper this time. He was checking to ensure his people wouldn't take resources she needed. Most species gave lip service to such courtesy, but rarely followed through. "Of course," she said. He pulled out a handheld scanner, less sophisticated than hers but functional. The device chirped as he swept it across the blooms, recording data. "Looks safe for both of us," he said after a moment. "Though I can't imagine this tastes like much to humans. Not enough sugar content. We need higher concentrations for the flavor to register. It is adequate for my needs." He looked at her, something thoughtful in his expression. "Adequate's a pretty low bar. You sure you're going to be okay out here food-wise?" The question felt layered, like he was asking about more than just nutrition. "I brought supplies," she said. "They will last the contract duration. 3 months of bland nutrition paced, chemically balanced and utterly joyless." "Yeah, but..." He trailed off, seemed to make a decision. "Look, I know our food freaks you out. Rightfully so. But we're not trying to poison you or anything. If there's anything we can do to make this easier, say the word. We want you comfortable here." The offer was genuine. She could hear it in his voice, see it in the way he met her eyes without the aggressive staring that some species used for dominance displays. "I appreciate that," she said quietly. The words felt inadequate for what she was feeling. They worked in companionable silence for several minutes, Myrth collecting samples while Leon updated the botanical database on his handheld. The sounds of camp drifted through the trees. Hugo's laughter, sharp and frequent. Russell's voice raised in some debate about fermentation temperatures. The smell of their cooking, caustic even at this distance. "Is all human cuisine this aggressive?" she asked finally. Leon huffed something that might have been a laugh, not all of it. "Some people eat pretty bland. Boiled vegetables, simple proteins. But the exploration types tend to be adventurous eaters. Goes with the personality, I guess." seeking out new experiences, new flavors, pushing boundaries. The personality that chooses to catalog garden worlds despite the inherent dangers, she said, takes one to know one. He grinned at her, and Myrth felt something warm unfurl in her chest. Fair point. The sun was setting through Verdani's canopy, painting the camp in shades of amber and crimson that made everything look softer. Myrth's internal chronometer suggested she should eat soon, replenish her energy reserves. The prospect of returning to her tent to consume bland nutrition, paced, while the humans enjoyed their toxin-laden meal, held little appeal. Leon stood, brushing soil from his knees with easy movements. "We're doing a group dinner tonight. You're welcome to join even if you can't eat the food. Might be good to learn everyone's faces, hear about the survey work we've done so far." She hesitated, caught between professional interest and self-preservation instinct. His expression softened. "Or not," he said. "No pressure. I know it's probably overwhelming, being surrounded by people who eat poison for fun. I will join you," she heard herself say. The surprise on his face was gratifying, made her feel bold. "I should understand the team dynamics, learn the patterns. If we're working together for 3 months, isolation would be counterproductive." Dinner happened around a portable table as Verdani's sky darkened to deep purple. 3 humans and 1 Marathi, sharing space in the wilderness. Myrth had her nutrition paced, gray and flavorless but safe. The humans had something that smelled like burning vegetation and spices, steam rising from their plates in curls that caught the light from portable lamps. Hugo dished out portions while Russell set up the lights, movements synchronized by obvious familiarity. Leon took the seat beside Myrth, close enough that she could feel warmth radiating from his body. Humans ran hot, she remembered. Their core temperature averaged 3 degrees higher than Marathi standard, a function of their aggressive metabolism. So, Russell said between mouthfuls of food that steamed ominously, "What's the weirdest plant you've ever cataloged?" Something to make us feel less weird about eating poison. Myrth considered the question while they ate, while she forced down nutrition paste that had the consistency of industrial lubricant. She described a flowering species from Murath Prime that only bloomed during electrical storms, how the petals conducted lightning to the root system and stored the energy in specialized cellular structures. Used it for rapid growth cycles. Hugo leaned forward, eyes bright. "That's wild. We've got something similar here, actually. Found it yesterday near the river delta. Whole field of them. Want to check it out tomorrow. Help us figure out if they're edible." She found herself agreeing before fully processing the invitation, before considering that checking if lightning-conducting plants were edible was exactly the kind of reckless behavior she should have expected from humans. Leon was quiet during most of the meal, but she caught him watching her. Not staring, exactly, more like checking to make sure she was comfortable, that she wasn't struggling. The attention should have felt intrusive. Instead, it felt careful. Protective, even. When Hugo brought out the fermented fruit, Myrth's membranes constricted reflexively. The smell hit her like a physical force, sharp and wrong and aggressive. She felt her secondary heart kick into emergency rhythm. "Put that downwind," Leon said sharply, voice cutting through Hugo's enthusiasm. Hugo blinked, then looked at Myrth. Her membranes were fluttering, her breathing shallow. "Oh," he said. "Right, sorry, didn't think." He moved the container to the far end of the table, then farther, then off the table entirely until the smell dissipated to manageable levels. Small gesture. It shouldn't have meant anything, shouldn't have registered as significant. Myrth's secondary heart kicked up anyway, warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with atmospheric temperature. The days fell into rhythm after that first dinner. Mornings surveying flora, cataloging species in the database, with detailed notes on habitat and chemical composition. Afternoons processing samples in the mobile lab, running analyses that generated data for both her research and the human expedition's objectives. Evenings at the group table while humans consumed things that would hospitalize her, while she learned their patterns. She learned their sounds. The way Russell's laugh boomed across camp when Hugo said something particularly absurd. Hugo's habit of humming while cataloging specimens, old Earth songs he claimed were classics. Leon's voice when he was focused, lower and rougher than his casual speech, like gravel smoothed by water. She learned their movements. How Russell gestured broadly when excited about data, nearly knocking over equipment. How Hugo couldn't sit still for more than 20 minutes, would jump up mid-sentence to check on some experiment. How Leon worked with quiet intensity, only speaking when he had something meaningful to contribute. She learned their care. How they moved their cooking area farther from her tent without comment, repositioning equipment so prevailing winds carried the smell away from her workspace. How Russell started warning her before unsealing particularly pungent samples, giving her time to increase filtration or step outside. How Hugo brought her flowers compatible with her biology, awkwardly offering them like he wasn't sure if Marathi appreciated such gestures, but willing to try anyway. How Leon watched her with increasing frequency, those brown eyes tracking her movements across camp with an intensity that made her skin feel warm. For days in, she caught him staring while she worked on a vine specimen. He didn't look away when she met his gaze, just held it for 3 heartbeats before returning to his data tablet. 6 days in, their hands brushed while reaching for the same scanning tool. He pulled back immediately, apologizing. She felt the warmth of his skin for hours afterward. 8 days in, she realized she was seeking him out, asking his opinion on specimens she could analyze independently, standing closer than professional distance required, noticing the way his hands moved, careful and precise, the way his voice softened when he spoke to her, the way he smiled when she said something that amused him. Dangerous territory. Professional boundaries existed for good reasons. 10 days in, they discovered a grove of something extraordinary. The trees weren't like anything in the database, weren't matching any known genus. Bark that shifted colors with the light, moving through shades of silver and pale blue. Leaves that hummed at frequencies just below Marathi hearing range, but that she felt as vibration in her bones. The flowers were massive, easily a meter across, deep crimson with silver veins that pulsed like they carried fluid. Meyerth's scanners went wild, data streaming faster than her equipment could process. Leon, she called, not looking up from her readings. You need to see this. He appeared at her shoulder within seconds, close enough that she felt his breath on her neck. His proximity sent heat across her back, through her environmental suit. What am I looking at? Adaptive chromophores in the bark, she said, trying to focus on science instead of his nearness. The trees are communicating through color changes. Chemical signals translated to visible spectrum. And these flowers, she trailed off, running another scan. What about them? His voice was quiet, interested. The nectar. It has compounds I have never encountered, proteins that don't match anything in my database. This could be a completely new family of flora, something that evolved independently. His hand brushed her arm. That's incredible. You want to collect samples? Get this analyzed properly. Yes, she said, but carefully. I do not know if it is safe for either of our species. Could be defensive chemistry we haven't seen before. They worked together setting up collection equipment, their movements synchronized by 10 days of proximity. Leon's hands were steady as he assembled the containment unit, checking seals twice before nodding approval. Meyerth caught herself watching those hands, wondering what they would feel like against her skin without the barrier of gloves and environmental suits. Inappropriate thoughts, professional boundaries, her body didn't seem to care about either. The sample collection took hours. The trees produced nectar slowly, requiring patience and careful extraction. By the time they finished, both were covered in tree pollen that glittered like ground gems, silver dust that clung to every surface. Leon looked at her and laughed. You've got silver all over your face. Looks like you've been rolling in starlight. She looked at him, saw the same glittering dust caught in his hair, on his shoulders. So do you. His laughter faded to something softer, warmer. We should probably decontaminate before heading back to camp. Don't want to contaminate the lab with unknown compounds. They found a stream nearby, water running clear over smooth stones. Meyerth washed her hands, watching pollen drift away downstream in silver clouds. Leon knelt beside her. The water must have been cold, temperature differential significant. Humans didn't regulate temperature as efficiently as Marathi, needed external heat sources to maintain core temperature in cool environments. But he didn't complain, just scrubbed the pollen from his arms with methodical thoroughness. "Does your skin not register temperature discomfort?" she asked. "Oh, it definitely does." His grin was quick, almost self-deprecating. "I'm freezing. But complaining won't make the water warmer, and we need to be clean before handling sensitive equipment. You choose to endure discomfort rather than express it. Pretty much." He shook water from his hands, droplets catching light. "Humans are good at ignoring what our bodies tell us. Pain, cold, exhaustion. Sometimes that's useful, helps us push through when we need to. Sometimes it's stupidity, ignoring warning signs until something breaks. Which is this, probably stupidity," he admitted. But he was smiling, and Myrth found herself smiling back. They walked back to camp as Verdani's sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and deep purple. The path was familiar now, marked by specimens they'd cataloged together over 10 days of work. Leon broke the comfortable silence. "Can I ask you something personal?" She tensed slightly, prepared to deflect. "You may ask, I may not answer." "Fair," he said, then seemed to gather his thoughts. "Does it bother you? Being surrounded by our food, knowing everything we eat could kill you, watching us consume poisons while you eat paste." Myrth considered her response carefully, weighing honesty against professional distance. "Initially, yes," she said finally. "I found your eating habits disturbing, dangerous, a sign of recklessness that suggested poor decision-making in other areas. And now I find them fascinating. You evolved on a world that tried to poison you constantly, so you developed chemistry aggressive enough to metabolize those poisons. You turned weapons into sustenance, death into nutrition. It's remarkable, really, adaptive capability at its finest." He was quiet for several steps, boots crunching on fallen leaves. "That's the most generous interpretation of human eating habits I've ever heard," he said quietly. "Most species just think we're crazy. It is not generosity, it is observation, scientific analysis." They reached the camp's perimeter. Hugo had the cooking unit running, filling the air with smells that still made Myrth's membranes burn, but that she'd learned to tolerate. Leon stopped walking, turned to face her. "Wait here, just for a minute, please." She waited, curious and slightly anxious. He disappeared into the cooking area. She heard low voices, Hugo's protest, Leon's firm response that didn't quite carry. Russell's laughter, supportive. 5 minutes later, Leon returned carrying a covered container. "Come with me." She followed him away from camp, away from the cooking smells and the lights. He led her to a clearing they'd surveyed 3 days prior, flat rock providing a natural seat. Leon set down the container and opened it carefully. Steam rose, but this time the smell wasn't caustic. It was almost pleasant, subtle sweetness without the underlying aggression. "I can't compete with your nutrition paste nutritionally," he said, not meeting her eyes. "But I thought you might like something that actually tastes like food. Something you could enjoy instead of just tolerate." Myrth stared at the contents, processing what she was seeing. Vegetables she recognized from her safe consumption database, cooked simply in water. No spices, no toxins. Fruits she'd identified as compatible, arranged carefully. Even the nectar from the vine she'd found her first day, drizzled over everything like a sauce. "You made this for me." Her voice came out quieter than intended, barely above a whisper. "Hugo helped," Leon said quickly. "We cross-checked everything 3 times against your biology data. Ran it through analysis to make sure there's no cross-contamination from our cooking equipment. It should be safe, but you don't have to eat it if you're not comfortable. If you want to scan it first, that's fine." She reached for the container with shaking hands. The food was warm, simple, unseasoned by human standards, probably bland. She took a bite and her eyes welled up. It tasted like care. Like someone had paid attention to her preferences, remembered her casual comments about flavor profiles. The vine nectar was drizzled exactly as she'd mentioned preferring. The root vegetables were prepared exactly the way she'd described liking them in some long-forgotten conversation. Leon sat beside her on the rock, not touching, but close enough that she felt his warmth radiating through the evening air. "Is it okay?" His voice was uncertain, almost anxious. Like her opinion mattered more than it should. She couldn't speak around the emotion clogging her throat, around the realization that he'd done this. Had listened to her, cataloged her preferences the way she cataloged plants, taken time from his own work to prepare something she could actually enjoy. She just nodded, kept eating. Every bite was proof of attention, of care, of something building between them that had nothing to do with professional collaboration. When had he learned these things? When had he started cataloging her words with the same focus she cataloged Flora? "You did not need to do this," she said finally, once she'd regained control of her voice. "I know," he said quietly. "Wanted to?" "Why?" The question came out smaller than intended. "Because you're part of the team. Because I don't like the idea of you eating bland paste while we enjoy our meals, even if our meals are toxic to you." "Because," he trailed off. Because I like you," he said simply. "And I wanted to do something nice. Something that showed you matter." The words hit her like a physical force. "You like me. Is that okay?" His voice had gone uncertain again. She struggled for words, for concepts that would express what she was feeling. "Yes, that is okay. That is more than okay." His smile was sunrise bright, transforming his face. "Good," he said. "That's good. I was hoping you'd say that. Been wanting to tell you for days but couldn't figure out how." They sat together while Verdani's moons rose, 3 silver crescents painting the clearing in soft light. Meyerth finished the food slowly, savoring every bite, savoring the fact that he'd done this for her. "Your hands," she said eventually. "May I?" He held them out without hesitation, palms up. She ran her fingers over them, tracing the lines and calluses. His skin was warm, slightly rough from field work. So different from Marathi physiology, from her own smooth skin and delicate bone structure. So careful when touching her, when they brushed against each other during work. "This is unprecedented," she said softly. "Humans sharing food with other species is documented. But preparing food specifically compatible with non-human biology, for no strategic advantage, for no diplomatic purpose. Maybe that's not how we think about it," Leon said. His fingers curled gently around hers, careful of his strength. "Maybe we just like taking care of people who matter to us, showing them they're valued. I matter to you." It wasn't a question. "Yeah," he said, "you really do. Have since about day 3, if I'm being honest. When you explained the lightning flowers, something shifted in her chest. Not just her secondary heart rate increasing, though it was doing that too. Something deeper, something that felt like the beginning of gravity." She leaned against his shoulder, testing. He adjusted immediately to support her weight, arm coming around her to steady her. They sat like that while the clearing filled with bioluminescent insects, painting the air with drifting light that looked like captured stars. "This is highly unprofessional," Meyerth said eventually. "Probably," he agreed. "We should return to camp. Maintain appropriate boundaries. Probably." Neither of them moved. Leon's thumb traced patterns on the back of her hand, gentle circles that sent warmth through her. "I'll keep making you food," he said quietly. "If you want." Hugo thinks it's a fun challenge, figuring out what we can cook that won't poison you. Russell's been researching Marathi cuisine, trying to understand flavor profiles you'd enjoy. "They want to help. I would like that," she said. "Very much." "Good." The word was soft, warm, full of promise. The kind of promise that suggested this was just beginning, that there were more clearings and more meals and more quiet moments ahead. Meyerth closed her eyes and let herself absorb the moment. A human who metabolized toxins like they were treats, who moved through a death world with casual grace, who noticed what she needed before she asked, who cooked her dinner because he liked her, because she mattered. Hugo's voice echoed from camp, carrying through the trees. "You two dead out there or just stargazing? Because if you're stargazing, Russell wants to know which constellations are visible. He's taking measurements." Leon laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest where she leaned against him. "Stargazing," he called back. "We're fine, be back soon." Meyerth looked up at him. "We are fine," she agreed. His smile was answer enough. They walked back to camp hand in hand. And for the first time since arriving on Verdani's, Meyerth wasn't thinking about toxins or chemical defenses or the 100 ways this world could kill her. She was thinking about tomorrow's survey, about the adaptive chromophore trees and the data they'd collected. About Hugo's promise to find more compatible foods, Russell's research into Marathi cuisine. About Leon's hand in hers, warm and steady and careful. About how humans turned weapons into sustenance, danger into comfort, fear into fascination. About how maybe, just maybe, she was learning to do the same. The camp lights appeared through the trees. Russell had the database open, updating survey coordinates with meticulous precision. Hugo was still at the cooking unit, probably planning more fermentation experiments that would smell terrible and produce something they'd claim was delicious. Leon squeezed her hand before letting go as they approached the group, maintaining professional distance. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked quietly. "More surveying?" "Yes," she said, and she hesitated, and "perhaps you could teach me about human food preparation. I would like to understand it better. Understand why you seek out compounds that cause pain, why fermentation appeals to you, the chemistry behind your cuisine." His grin was incandescent, bright enough to rival Verdani's sun. "Yeah," he said, "I'd like that, would like to share that with you." She returned to her tent eventually, her container empty, her heart full. The nutrition paste sat unopened on her supply shelf. Tomorrow she would survey the adaptive chromophore grove, collect more samples, analyze data. Tomorrow she would learn about human food preparation, about the chemistry and culture behind their aggressive cuisine. Tomorrow Leon would cook for her again. Meyerth lay in her bunk, listening to the sounds of camp. Hugo's laughter, sharp and frequent. Russell's voice explaining something about fermentation temperatures. Leon saying something too quiet to hear, but that made the others laugh. The sounds of humans, dangerous and kind in equal measure. Creatures who ate poison and called it pleasure, who thrived on deathworlds and called them home, who reached across biological incompatibility and called it friendship. Called it something more. Meyerth's eyes drifted closed, but sleep didn't come immediately. Her mind was too active, processing the day. The grove discovery, the samples that could represent a new family of flora. Leon's hands, warm and careful, the food he'd made just for her. The way he'd said he liked her, simple and honest. The way her chest had tightened with something that felt dangerously close to affection. Dangerous for other reasons now. Not because he could hurt her physically, though he absolutely could, but because she was starting to care what he thought, how he felt, whether he smiled when he saw her. Starting to seek out his company not for professional collaboration, but because she enjoyed being near him. Enjoyed his voice, his careful consideration, the way he noticed things. The way he made her feel seen. Outside, the conversation continued. Someone had started a small fire, unusual but permitted. She heard the crackle of burning wood, smelled smoke that was cleaner than their cooking odors. Heard Leon's voice, talking about the grove discovery. Excitement in his tone, genuine enthusiasm for the botanical find, for her work. 3 months on Verdani's had seemed like a long time when she'd signed the contract. Now it seemed impossibly short. 90 days minus 10 already passed. 80 days left to work with this team, to catalog this world's flora. 80 days with Leon before the contract ended and she returned to Murath Prime. 80 days to explore whatever this was building between them. Not enough time. Nowhere near enough time. But enough to matter, she thought. Enough to mean something. Meyerth rolled onto her side, pulling the thermal blanket closer. Tomorrow she'd start the chromophore analysis. Tomorrow she'd learn about human cuisine, about capsaicin and fermentation, and all the ways they turned chemistry into culture. Tomorrow she'd work beside Leon and probably find more excuses to stand closer than necessary, to let their hands brush, to catch his eye across the camp. Tomorrow. But tonight she'd let herself feel this, whatever this was. Let herself acknowledge that somewhere between the caustic cooking smells and the careful considerations, between the poisoned fruits and the food prepared just for her, she'd started falling for a human who treated lethal compounds like delicacies, and her like she mattered. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like possibility, like the beginning of something that might transcend species differences and biological incompatibility, like gravity pulling her towards something she hadn't known she was seeking. Meyerth smiled in the darkness of her tent. 3 months on Verdani's, 80 days left. She'd make them count.